Well, it's finally here. Rotation has finally happened and we say goodbye to the E-Block. We salute Rapid Strike, Mew VMAX, and all the other decks that we've lost in the current format. Now that leaves the format kind of wide open as we haven't had our largest tournament yet in the F-Block rotation. Now you might be wondering, what deck do I build? What deck is cheap? What deck seems like fun? And what do you think will perform on the ladder? Well, I have a deck for you today. Get ready, guys, for some Ancient Box. Welcome back to Poke Primer, the show where I teach you guys the meta, break down every single deck that I kind of feel is interesting or that I feel like you guys should know. Unfortunately, we're in a weird spot right now as there has been no tournament postings yet for the F-Block, but I will be here presenting you a deck that I think is good enough to play into the new standard. It may not be exactly how I bring it up today, but this is a good example to get you started on the ladder. Lately on YouTube, I actually have been starting to post a lot of community posts to kind of get an idea of what you guys wanted to see. Earlier, I did a poll asking which deck did you guys want to see, and you guys voted on Ancient Box. So let's start with Ancient Box, a deck that I feel like can definitely be a contender in the current format. For those who are new to the Pokemon TCG, or those just looking to return, you're going to find something new. We now have Ancient and Future Pokemon. Ancient Pokemon and Future Pokemon were printed right around the start of the Scarlet and Violet era. Not only do they pertain to Pokemon, but they can pertain to items as well as supporters too. To give a little bit more in-depth conversation, let's talk about this deck's main attacker, Koraidon. Koraidon was printed in Temporal Forces and is an Ancient Pokemon. Koraidon is still considered a basic Pokemon with 140 HP, and is still a Dragon-type Pokemon. Ancient is added on to everything else this card is. The goal of Ancient Box is to use the tags of Ancient to synergize with Koraidon's attack, as well as Roaring Moon's attack. Koraidon's attack Primal Beatdown does 30 times the number of each of your Ancient Pokemon in play. You also have Roaring Moon, which has the attack Vengeance Fletchling, that deals 70 plus 10 more damage for each Ancient card in your discard pile. Remember, this counts supporters and items as well. We'll go more into this as we continue looking at the deck. Besides the main attackers, you have more Ancient synergy. You use stuff like Ancient Drum, which allows you to draw a card for each of your Ancient Pokemon in play, as well as Professor Sada's Vitality to choose 2 of your Ancient Pokemon and attach a basic energy from your discard pile to one of them. If you attach an energy this way, draw 3 cards. This deck is considered an Ancient Box deck, also known as Ancient Toolbox. But the idea is that you want to take advantage of the best Ancient synergy in the format. Note, most of this deck is going to be highly theoretical. No tournaments have happened yet for the F format, so we're going to be kind of feeling our way around here and seeing what works right. This list was highly inspired by Shuffle Squad as well as Azul GG, so consider checking out those channels if you want to see more about these lists or you want another take overall. For this deck, we're going to be using 13 Pokemon. Our goal is to maximize the amount of Ancient Pokemon that we have, so we'll be playing 4 of each Ancient Pokemon we name here. We'll be playing 4 Koraidon, the one that has Primal Beatdown because it cares about every Ancient Pokemon in play. This is a given and this will basically be your main attacker for early game. Your second Pokemon you're going to choose is Roaring Moon, which will also be 4 of. The Vengeance Fleeting attack is just so good with us playing every single Ancient card that we can that is good enough for this list. And the other Ancient Pokemon we're going to be playing is Fluttermane. Fluttermane has the ability Midnight Fluttering that says as long as this Pokemon's in your active spot, your opponent's active Pokemon has no abilities except for Midnight Fluttering. After putting this Pokemon into play, you're going to be using its attack Hex Hurl that deals 90 to the active and 2 damage counters on your opponent's benched Pokemon. While this isn't a very strong attacker, it's a very good fill as our last required Ancient Pokemon, as it can use any energy type for its attacks, and it shuts down abilities that we may not know are in the format yet. And lastly, our final Pokemon, even though it's not Ancient, we will be playing Radiant Greninja for the Concealed Cards ability. We want to get energy into our discard, so being able to discard an energy to draw 2 cards is very strong in this type of list. Now for the trainers. For our ace spec of the deck, also known as an item or tool card that can only be played as a one-of, we're going to choose Awakening Drum. Awakening Drum is an Ancient item card that says draw a card for each of your Ancient Pokemon in play. Since we're going to be wanting to flood our board with Ancient Pokemon anyway, this card is an absolute given and contributes towards Roaring Moon's attack anyway. Our Ancient trainers are going to be the following. We'll be playing 4 Earthen Vessel, 4 Explorer's Guidance, and 4 Professor Sada's Vitality. For the rest of the trainers, we'll be playing 2 Ultra Ball, 2 Counter Catcher, 2 Pokestop, 2 Great Ball, 2 Artisan, 2 Energy Retrieval, 1 Super Rod, 4 Pokegear 3.0, 4 Nest Ball, 4 Ancient Energy Capsule, and 1 Boss's Orders. Our energy cut is going to be kind of easy. We're going to be running 6 Dark Energy and 2 Fighting Energy. We choose to play so much Dark Energy over Fighting Energy because our Koraidon requires only 1 Fighting Energy, while our Roaring Moon requires Dark Energy. Note, you can move 1 Dark Energy over to a Fighting, but I really wouldn't through playtesting. I've found that having the 2 Fighting and the 6 Dark is exactly where we want to be at. Now that we have the list, let's talk about the gameplay plan and just things overall. So your main attacker of the deck is going to be Koraidon and Roaring Moon, each one kind of setting up where they want to play in the game. Koraidon is going to be used for early hits. As you're going to be flooding your board, you're probably going to be hitting for about 150 for 2 energy, which is huge when you think about it. You'll 2-hit EXs, and you'll 1-hit almost anything else that's a 1 prizer. Your second attacker is going to be Roaring Moon. This is going to be used once you have a lot of cards in your discard pile, so any Pokemon that get knocked out, anything that comes off of your Explorer's Guidance, maybe after you play a couple Sada's Vitalities, maybe you discard some Earthen Vessels or use them to find energy. Either way, once those ancient cards are in your discard, Roaring Moon's going to start hitting very hard very quickly. So let's get to the point of where we're going to get there. So usually what you're going to do is you're going to take a Fighting Energy from your hand and try to attach it to a Koraidon early. Then you'll try to find a way to discard an energy from your hand. That way you can take advantage of Professor Sada's Vitality. But there's going to be a lot of times where you're not either going to have a Professor Sada's Vitality or you're not going to be able to speed up your attachments that well. Don't be afraid to be slow and manually attach energy to your Pokemon. Just understand they have lower HP pools and they may get knocked out by EXs. So try to plan ahead a little bit. So for example, if I had Professor Sada's late game and my Koraidon was already set up, maybe I would use Professor Sada to attach 2 Dark Energy to 2 separate Roaring Moons. That way if I get an energy retrieval or I have another Dark Energy in hand, I can set up a Roaring Moon for the next attack after my Koraidon gets knocked out. Just please, please, please don't forget that usually your bench is going to look something like Koraidon in the active, a Koraidon on the bench, maybe a Flutter Mane, and then a couple of Roaring Moons there getting ready to attack later on. The goal of this deck is to set up 1 attacker and then get ready to bring up your next attacker. So kind of pay attention to what's in your discard pile, make sure there's enough ancient Pokemon or ancient cards in there. If not, then keep attacking with your Koraidon. Don't be afraid to use Flutter Mane either. Even though Flutter Mane is 3 energy to attack, being able to do 90 and put 2 damage counters on any of your opponent's Pokemon is huge. And by it sitting in the active and shutting down your opponent's abilities, it may be the thing you need to get yourself out of a tricky situation. So don't forget that you have this card available. Remember that you are a 1 prize attacker list, so getting your stuff knocked out isn't as bad as having your opponent have their EXs knocked out. Take advantage of Counter Catcher when you can. You're going to soften things up with your Koraidon or even your Roaring Moon, so use that Counter Catcher to bring that guy back up there even if he retreats and knock them out. It's very fun, and I swear if you give the deck some time, you'll really shine with it. The last thing I want to talk about is Explorer's Guidance, the other ancient supporter that is in this list. You look at the top 6 cards of your deck and put 2 of them into your hand while you discard the other cards. Be sure to keep account of how many ancient cards are in your discard when you play this card, including Explorer's Guidance, because you may want to put more ancient cards in your discard, even if it slows you down a little bit. One of the biggest skill caps of this deck is going to be able to make sure that you go through your deck enough and get enough stuff into discard without running out of cards in your deck. 6 cards is a lot to see a lot of times, so if you have the opportunity between Sada's and Explorer's Guidance, you usually want a Sada's more often, especially because it keeps your momentum going with energy. But there is a time and place to play Explorer's Guidance, and that's where the mastery of this deck comes from. And that's about it for Ancient Box, guys. I hope you enjoyed the deck a lot. It's been a blast to play on the ladder, and honestly, it's not that expensive to make either. There is another variant that you might be able to make using these cards that is Great Tusk Mill. It doesn't use the same Pokemon, but it uses a lot of the same supporters. So maybe you could double dip into another deck there if you'd like. but understand that Ancient's only going to be playing with Ancient cards. If you like this content and you want to see more stuff about it and more stuff in the F block, feel free to drop a comment. Tell me how much you liked it, maybe give the channel a sub, give it a thumbs up and a like. I appreciate you guys sticking with me as I've been sick, and we kind of been waiting for the format to kind of establish itself. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for sticking by, and have a great F format.